we sing your spirit.
Your spirit lives within
So
me.
I will walk in
So
your peace.
I will walk in your
Sing your
peace.
spirit.
Your spirit lives within
Sing my victory. Sing my victory.
my victory.
Your
Your
spirit.
spirit lives within me.
So your spirit.
Lives within
Sing my victory. Sing my victory.
I attended seminary school in 1999, and 4 years later I took over my great-grandfather's church in uptown New Orleans. Things were okay for me as a young pastor. The church grew to about 200 members, and by me inheriting that church from my great-grandfather, I inherited the property surrounding it as well. One half of a square block, and the plan was to expand and purchase the entire block. I remember that time, man. Things were so busy for me in my life back then. New church. My girlfriend and I were about to get married. I had consultants working to buy property, and also I was working with city leaders to try and fight crime in that particular neighborhood. And crime was a huge part of the reason why I wanted to buy those blighted properties in my area, because they were being used as drug housing. To me, it was better for me to buy them and tear them down and just leave the land, as opposed to have drug dealers right around the corner from the church. In total, it was 13 houses that I needed to buy. 9 of them were blighted and vacant. 3 of them were rental properties that were owned by landlords. And 1 was owned by a woman named Nia Cooper, 32 years old, single, no kids, no husband. And that house was in absolutely deplorable condition. From the street, you could visually see holes in the roof. The guy Jonathan I hired to do the land acquisition took about 2.5 to 3 years to purchase all the property. All property except Miss Cooper's residence. I'll never forget getting a phone call from him about that property, because it was the very same morning that I found out that my wife was pregnant with our first kid. He calls, "Hey Pastor, Miss Cooper is not willing to sell this property, so either we're going to have to build around her, or we can go into the city of New Orleans and purchase her property at tax sale." Now keep in mind, I'm just finding out I got a new baby on the way. This property thing is the furthest from my mind. So I tell him, go ahead and do what you need to do to get the property. We'll talk about it later. That morning I was rejoiceful and happy because things in my life were going good. And they kept going good until things turned dramatically bad. But what I mean by that is that this series of unfortunate events begins to happen. It all started off with me sitting at a red light, switching the channel on the radio, and bam, a 18-wheeler slams into the back of my car. Police officers said, based on how fast he was moving, that I should have been dead. But I got out of that accident without one scratch. Next thing you know, somebody breaks into our church, ramsacks the corporate office, and to this day, I guess they were looking for money. I don't know. A few weeks after that, while we're in service, every car outside has their windows broken and items stolen from their vehicle. To me, it seemed like something or someone was starting to come against me. And to be honest with you, it worried me. So I turned to the Lord in prayer and said, God, I'm not sure who or what this is that's coming against us, but I need you to reveal to me. Listen to me, 7 days passed. And when I tell you that it's revealed to me and the entire church what's going on, the revelation was like something out of a movie. Early Sunday morning, 7:30 a.m., I'm preparing for our 9 a.m. service. My security guard comes walking in and says, Pastor, there's blood on the front steps of the church. Immediately, my mind jumped to the worst. Someone had been shot. Oh God, what if one of my parishioners was shot? So I hop up and head with him to the front door. There we discover a red X painted in blood. Now, growing up in New Orleans and going to seminary school, you learn a lot about witchcraft. That X in blood was definitely a sign of witchcraft. Written in the V spaces of the X were various hoodoo symbols. Now I realize that someone is not only practicing magic against me, but my entire congregation. I have the security guard get a broom, a hose pipe, and some bleach, and wash it off before everybody gets to church. Now listen to this. I'm in the middle of my sermon, preaching to the congregation, when in walks this lady, all black on, white linen cloth wrapped around her head, and she starts screaming. You're not going to take my house. There's nothing you can do to take my house. I had never seen this woman before in my life, but the Spirit spoke to me and said, that's your problem. Her name is Naya Cooper. Immediately I said, Miss Cooper, and you see her eyes get big and wide. We can talk about this once church service is over. Please, you're welcome to have a seat. This woman sits down in the back pew of the church, and as I'm preaching, I can feel the negative energy coming off of this woman. So strong that it's almost making it hard for me to speak my words. Service ends, everybody's going home. I call her into my office along with my security guard, and I start to question her. Miss Cooper, did you paint that X outside of our church? Without hesitation, this woman says yes. And she proceeds to tell me that she's not only going to destroy my church, she's going to destroy my family. She tells me about my pregnant wife that's at home, and how right now my pregnant wife is having stomach pains, and that she's going to call me before this conversation is over because the pain is going to be so great that I'm going to have to do what she says. Sure enough, as this woman walks out of the room with this evil smile on her face, my cell phone is ringing. It's my wife, and she's talking about how she's having these terrible pains in her stomach and how she's afraid that she's losing our baby. Panic washed over my entire body. This woman was using black magic against me and my family. And by family, I mean my entire church family. 50 minutes later, my key is turning in the front door. At home with my wife, she's bent over in pain, but can't find anything wrong. Understand, at this point in time, the only people who know what's really going on is me and my head of security. So I have him take my wife back home and sit with her while I head to that woman's house. Miss Cooper. Miss Cooper. This woman was surprised to see me at her front door, but there was no way that I was letting this slide. I stood there confidently, looked her square in the eyes and said, Miss Cooper, we can talk about this situation with your house, but let me start by apologizing because I've been so busy with so much going on in my life. You may feel as if I wronged you by buying the taxes on your property. The truth of the matter is, I have. I should have come here and held a conversation with you myself. With that said, ma'am, I want to apologize. However, what you're doing right now is against me and against my God, and I have to ask you to stop. Looking over her shoulder, you could see light from the sun shining into her house, candles lit, altars. This woman was a serious magic practitioner. Miss Cooper, I want to work this out. What will it take for me to make this right? For a split second, I thought I had connected with this woman. You could see that look in her eyes, like someone cares about me, like he's genuine. But the next thing you know, the door slammed in my face. I fasted and prayed, asking that God would protect me, my wife, my congregation, my church, and anyone who had ever been under the sound of my voice. Listen to me, on the 6th day, we have this hellacious rainstorm in New Orleans. It starts to flood everywhere, lightning striking, winds blowing, trees falling. A storm so bad that the entire city is shut down. That night I get a phone call from the consultant who had been working on my behalf to buy the property. He says, Pastor, you are not going to believe this. Remember that house that we were trying to buy that was around the corner? Keep in mind, this guy doesn't know anything about what's going on. I said, yes, I remember that house. He says, lightning struck that house. On fire, right now, burning down. And if you listen to me, I need you to understand something. It was still raining outside. There should have been no way on the planet that house was burning down in a rainstorm. He goes on to tell me that he just drove by and the fire department is there spraying water on it, and the fire's still not going out. Burned to the ground. Once off the phone with him, I immediately fell to my knees, thanking the Lord that he fought my battle for me. Because at the end of the day, it wasn't my battle to fight, it was his. Listen, that's not the end of the story. After this woman's house burns down, I say, look, let me see if I can find her and help her out. Turns out she moved to New Orleans East, right off Sheffman Tour Highway. I go again to this woman, knock on the door. Miss Cooper, I came to see if there's anything I can do to help you. I know that your house burned down in a fire. Anything I could do to be assistance. I know this is a very difficult time for you. Anything that I can do, I'm here to do. Do you need money? Do you need food? Do you need clothing? My church is willing to help you. Again, she slams the door in my face. And as I ride away in my car, the Spirit of the Lord convicts me and says, son, you've done everything you can do. Leave this to me. And I want you to listen to me. So I pull away from that house with 100% clear conscience. I've made multiple efforts to make it right with this woman. She's not listening. She's not open to it. So I go on about my business. A month later, for the first time in almost 50 years, a tornado lands down in New Orleans East, goes along Sheffman Tour Highway, right there where this woman's house was. The house is ripped from the foundations, completely torn to shreds. And to be clear with you, I never once rejoiced or reveled in any of this at all. Was I happy that God came to my defense? Absolutely. But did I want to see that woman lose everything multiple times? No, I didn't. Last I heard, Miss Cooper had moved up to Ruston, Louisiana, and was living there. For those of you listening, I thank God for that. Also understand that God will fight the battles for you. You just have to focus on making sure your relationship with Him is right.
Your spirit lives within. So I, your spirit lives within. Sing my victory. Sing my victory. Your spirit. My victory, your spirit, within me. So I will walk in your peace. Sing my victory, 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 sing my victory. Sing hallelujah, hallelujah. I am not alone. Oh, He's my comfort, and He always holds me close. Church, let's sing this out. Sing hallelujah. And hallelujah, I am not alone. He's my comfort. Yes, He is. He